Hello and welcome to this evening's Quad Education webinar. This is part two of our three-part series on writing your personal statement. My name is Bianca. I'm a part of the team here at Quad Education. So we're gonna get started today. We're gonna talk about what you want to do and how you want to go about writing your personal statement after you've chosen your topic. We're going to go over our agenda. So first, we're going to introduce our two lovely panelists. We have Marina and Brittney with us today. Then we're going to talk about developing your personal statement topic. It'll be a brief overview of what we had discussed in last week's webinar on brainstorming and choosing a topic. Then we're going to get into structuring your personal statement, steps you can take to do that. After that, we're going to talk about how you can ensure you have a common thread throughout your personal statement. Then we're going to go over some final tips. And at the end, we have a Q&A section where you can pop your questions in. You have a Q&A box on your screen somewhere. So feel free to do that throughout the presentation or after. All right, let's get started with introductions. We have Brittney and Marina. Brittney, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Hi, everyone. My name is Brittney Vivena, and I'm an admissions counselor with Quad Education. I graduated from the University of Berkeley with my bachelor's in political science, and I'm just a couple weeks away from graduating with my master's in public policy from the Harvard Kennedy School. I have been working with students for quite some time now and really enjoy the process of helping students craft their personal statement and think about how they share their story with admissions.
Thank you so much, Brittney. Also, congratulations. And we also have Marina here. Hi, Marina.
Hi there. My name is Marina Little, and I'm also an admissions counselor with Quad. I graduated from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania as an undergraduate and studied finance and UPenn. Also did minors in political science and Spanish. And I did my graduate studies at the University of Chicago, where I got an MBA. And really enjoy working with students who are kind of embarking on this really exciting path in life and trying to help them figure out what will be the best decision and how to make that happen.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for being here. All right, so we're going to get started. We're going to go over last week's webinar very, very quickly on how you can develop your personal statement topic, brainstorming, all that good stuff. So Brittney, let's take it away.
Thanks, Bianca. So your personal statement is really an essential core part of your application. It's your opportunity to tell your story to the admissions committee. And that includes both who you are, kind of where you come from, what you're interested in, but it also helps, it gives you an opportunity to talk about why you want to attend whatever college or university that you're applying to. And so it is your chance to really help set yourself apart from other candidates who may have similar backgrounds, who may have similar academic resumes and test scores. And it's a chance to connect to the admissions committee and really get them to root for you by talking about who you are and what you're hoping to accomplish when you go off to undergrad.
Awesome. And do you have anything to add to that, Marina?
I just really like how you articulated the getting them to root for you. It really is very much like that. You'll find that sometimes people on the admissions committee will really connect with an essay and even provide you that feedback when they send back your letter. So definitely consider an opportunity to make that personal connection.
Beautiful. All right, so we're gonna go over a recap of choosing a topic.
So we had in part one another webinar just talking about choosing a topic, which I think is one of the most important parts of the process. But just to recap what we talked about, you want to start by brainstorming a list of potential topics, thinking about what do you really want to write about? How do you want to tell your story? You can create a list of personal experiences, your academic achievements, community service. I also like to encourage my students to talk to people, talk to their parents, talk to their friends, talk to teachers, and think about what stands out about me to you, what comes to mind when you think about me. And that might also help you kind of start to create that list. And then you'll kind of narrow down to the few topics that you will talk about in your essays. You want to identify a central theme for your admissions essays. And I often tell students to kind of think about themselves as a brand and a narrative, and who are you and how are you going to communicate who you are and what you've achieved and where you're going across all of your admissions essays and across all of your application. You may want to think about a particular experience, a passion, a value that shaped who you are, and that has kind of run through your academic and extracurricular experiences. And that's something that will be evident kind of throughout your personal statement. And you can go back to our previous webinar to hear more about choosing a topic, but we're going to talk in this session more about what to do next.
Yes, if you want to know where to find that webinar, that will be on our website at quadeducationgroup.com. And Marina, do you have anything to add to this?
I think that would be a great reference. If you want to just think about it as a quick thing, like think of it as answering the question, right? Of what is the special thing that I want the admissions committee to know about me? And that kind of becomes, your theme and your thesis. And once you have that, it's a lot easier when you know what the point is that you want.
Amazing. All right, so now we're going to talk about what you're going to do after you've chosen your topic. We're going to talk about outlining and structuring your personal statement and how you can go about doing that. All right.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start by saying that I hate outlines. I hate the process of writing outlines, but I promise that doing it is going to make the whole essay writing process, one, way more efficient. It will take so much less time if you start with purpose and really like make a plan in this outline format. And two, it will make it much more effective and meaningful. So if anyone out there is like me and just doesn't enjoy the process, it's kind of like getting the hard part out of the way first. So definitely encourage spending some serious time outlining, organizing your thoughts, making sure your thesis is clear and that you have kind of that logic woven through the different stories or the different pieces of the story that you want to tell. It'll just save you so much time and pain. And maybe even make it fun. And hopefully other people are not like me and actually really enjoy doing an outline. But a super important part.
Awesome. Do you have anything to add to that, Brittney?
I don't think so, actually. I think that captures it well.
Amazing. Okay, so now we're going to talk about structuring your personal statement, how you can work on your intro and body, what should be included in each of those parts. So let's get started. We're going to go over some steps in structuring.
Yeah, so once you've got that thesis, once you've got the central theme, you've got your outline, start with that first intro paragraph. And what you want to do is you're going to want to capture the reader's attention, but you're also going to give them a preview of what your essay is going to tell them about. So you do want to like allude and be pretty clear about what the central theme is going to be that you're going to be talking about throughout. So that intro paragraph really like sets the stage and lets people know a little bit about what to expect. And then once you've done that, this is very much like, it doesn't have to be a 5-paragraph essay, but you can think about it that way, right? Like intro, body paragraphs, conclusion. Once you've got that intro set up and given the preview, think about your body paragraph. So it'll probably be a few paragraphs. You're still going to want to use some of that good English language grammar stuff that we learned throughout school about making sure there's a topic sentence, making sure they're cohesive, introducing kind of the main idea so that it doesn't feel like you're just jumping around. You want to make sure that you're using examples. What I always really like to say is like, show, don't tell. If you could tell me, just a silly example, but if I want to communicate that my value throughout the central theme of my essay, if I want to communicate that I am someone who just like loves the combination of art and science, and that's kind of what I've determined is my theme. I can't just say, I love art and science and they fit so well together. like I have to really convince the reader by giving them examples and illustrating situations, making them really like feel that with me. So just very much like, don't just tell me, give me real examples that make this credible, that make me feel like I know you better. And then transitions, also good learnings from school that we're going to incorporate into our essay writing. Make sure that there are connections between paragraphs. Also, even as you get to that conclusion stage, like there can be really beautiful ways to connect your conclusion to your intro, kind of like bring things full circle sometimes. So make sure that you're using the right language to connect thoughts between paragraphs. And get to this conclusion piece, and then would love to, Brittney, for you to chime in too. Once you've gotten like the main story, the main examples, you want to end with a conclusion, and you want to really bring it together and make sure you land that point that you were trying to make. It's the last impression, so you don't want to make it too generic. You really want to land on a strong note, and make sure that whatever you decided was the thesis or the theme that you wanted to communicate to the admissions committee is super clear. And recency effect, right? Like if you end on a really strong note, they are going to feel very positive about it. So put just as much attention to your conclusion as you do to your introduction in the body paragraphs.
Absolutely. And Brittney, do you have anything to add in terms of how you can establish structure in your personal statement?
Yeah, I think Marina captured it very well, but I would just add that don't throw out the writing principles that you've spent a lot of time harnessing in your academic career. I think sometimes when we hear the word personal statement, we somehow think this is a very different type of essay. So it doesn't need clear structure, like a topic sentence. We should just like kind of, go in different directions, but make it easy for your reader to know what you're going to talk about and follow along. And I often find it can be helpful to start by writing a more didactic, like kind of easy to follow essay, and then going back and kind of making it more interesting, adding more examples, adding more descriptive language. But you want to make sure that the structure is clear and easy to follow. So very much just kind of reiterate that idea. It doesn't have to be a 5-paragraph essay, but it should be something where it has kind of clear topic sentences, clear conclusion sentences of each paragraph, and it's all supporting your main thesis. So think about it like you might be writing a different type of writing where you're writing a persuasive essay, but you want to make sure all of your evidence is going to support the main idea. And the main idea is the thesis of your story and what you want to share with the admissions committee.
Thank you guys so much. All right, so on the note of really starting strong and ending strong, we're going to go over some ways that you can write an impactful intro and conclusion.
Sure. So in terms of writing your introduction, I think you can think about things that you've read that have captured your attention, and that may be a nice place to start from some of the reading that you do. But I think ultimately you want to tell a story. And so that idea that Marina talked about of show, don't tell very much starts with your introduction. It sets the tone for your essay. And I think that you can do this by describing in more descriptive language, like put your reader at a moment of time in your life, if that's, that's one way in which you could do this. So if you're a swimmer, you want to talk about how swimming has been, a theme throughout your life, and maybe it's a metaphor for how you've addressed challenges or how you've persevered. Put the reader in the water, put the reader like at a particular moment of time, make them feel what you feel, hear what you hear, see what you would see, rather than just talking about it in the abstract or in kind of a more like news article type of way. You really want to make it come alive for the reader. But also in your examples, trying to do that show and not tell can leave a really strong impression on your reader.
All right, so we are going to move to crafting an impactful introduction. We'll start there and then go over the conclusion later on.
Yeah. So I started talking about the hook already. You want to have your central theme or thesis in your introduction. So you want a sentence that kind of talks about what you're trying to answer. So most personal statements, the prompts that you'll be given for different schools will be asking you some form of a question, whether it's why you want to attend the school, what you want to major in, maybe just a more general type of prompt that's like, tell us who you are and what you want to do in your academic career. Like it could kind of run the gamut, but you want a sentence or two that really answers that question very clearly and helps also connect who you are to the school, to the program, to what you hope to do. And I think that's an important connection. And provide some background information on who you are, your experiences. So, assume that the reader knows very little about you. They'll have your resume, they'll have all the pieces of your application that has where you went to school and your grades, but you can still provide some pieces of context so they know who you are, where you're from, anything that might be relevant to the story that you're trying to tell.
Beautiful. And do you have anything to add to that, Marina?
No, I think that was very beautifully put.
Yes. Okay.
I'm feeling
Awesome.
like I want to write one of these right now.
All right, so then we'll go over how you can write a strong conclusion, a couple of tips on that.
Yeah. So I think the conclusion's an opportunity to summarize for your reader what you want them to know. I think I mentioned earlier about having maybe 2 or 3 ideas that you want your reader to take away. And that's often how I have students start to think about their essays. Like, what are the 2 or 3 things I want this person to know about me after reading this essay? Your conclusion's a chance to reiterate those points. So if it's that you're very adaptable and you navigate change very well, and that's something that's been an asset to you in your academic career and will continue to be when you're at a university, that's the point that you want to include in the conclusion. That's your opportunity to kind of restate the thesis in new words, and then end with a memorable statement. One way to do this is to bring back the theme from your introduction. So if you were in the swimming pool or talking about swimming in your introduction, your conclusion might have a reference to that. You don't have to kind of give them a long descriptive essay in the conclusion, but you may allude to the theme that you talked about and how that's going to impact you. And I also think it's helpful to end your conclusion with something that's futuristic and future forward looking. So how will what the reader learned about you help prepare you for what you want to achieve and how you will succeed when you're at a college or university?
Awesome. And Marina, do you have anything to add to this?
I think maybe I'll just add that for me, when I was 17 or whatever age it was when I was applying to colleges, I felt like this piece about connecting to future goals or aspirations was very overwhelming. And I was like, I don't know if I know what they are. Like I have an idea, but I'm not sure I'm fully committed. And I think I just want to highlight that that's okay. We all have ideas that we move towards and then we change paths. So whatever kind of excites you now is a great thing to highlight there.
Thank you guys so much. That was very beautifully said. All right, so now we are going to go over how you can ensure that you have a common thread throughout your personal statement. We've sprinkled this throughout the presentation so far, but we're really going to nail that down in this section.
Yes. Those transitions, they are very important to creating a flow, like a beautifully read piece. You want the reader to really enjoy reading your work. And part of that is making sure that you're using transitions properly and kind of connecting one paragraph to another paragraph, making sure that it reads easily for them. So, as Brittney said, don't forget those lessons that you learned throughout your academic career. This is a very good time to use them.
All right.
And again, making sure you know what point you're trying to deliver and hitting it home. And one way to make sure that you've done that is have someone read it and tell you, what do you think was my main point? What do you think I'm trying to tell the admissions committee about me? And if they're aligned with what your goal was, then you're on the right track. But if they're telling you something else, then that's a good sign that probably somewhere you went astray a little bit. And, don't base it off of just one person, but ask a few people to read it and see if they're taking away the main message and the central theme that you've selected to write about.
That's a great piece. Yeah, sure. All right.
Yeah, and staying focused. This is very hard, I think, sometimes, because you want to make sure that the admissions committee knows that you're smart and you're enthusiastic about, science, and you love, X and Y and Z, and you feel like maybe you want to offer them this like buffet of all of your amazing qualities. But hold back and really try not to do that. Not every story needs to go into your personal statement, not every example. Make sure that what's in there is tied to that main point that you're trying to deliver. So instead of giving them a buffet, which they're going to be like, okay, I'm not sure what the main thing to take away from here is, serve them, like think super fancy restaurant, chef selects the meal, and they're just giving you this one plate with one little beautiful thing on it, because it's just going to make your story much more memorable for the reader. Just like if you shared your essay with a friend and they know what the takeaway was, you want to make sure that the admissions committee, the person that's reading your essay, it's like they read that and they're like, okay, this told me X about this applicant, and that's something that's important. So if you have a story you are super attached to, but it just doesn't fit with your central theme, use it somewhere else. But don't get too varied, and make sure you avoid those tangents.
Awesome. And do you have anything to add to this section, Brittney?
Finding my mute button. I think that I would just reiterate staying on theme, and trying not to accomplish too much in one essay. These days, most schools, you will submit more than one essay. You may have some short answers, you may have more than one long essay. And so there's multiple opportunities you have to share different parts of who you are. Sort of similar to applying for a job where you can only fit so many things onto your resume. It's supposed to be kind of the entree or appetizer to who you are. And then you may have an interview to follow, and you may have the opportunity to attend the school and they'll get to know more about you. So just kind of think about what the most important things are that you want to share, and stick to that, because otherwise it can be confusing for the reader, and they may walk away not knowing anything about, feeling like they don't know anything about you, rather than learning one or two really specific things.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So now that we've kind of gone over how you want to outline and structure your personal statement and how you can really make it stand out, we're gonna go over some final tips to help you write your personal statement. So we'll get into that now.
Sure. So a couple of tips, we've mentioned several of these throughout the presentation. While you want to reiterate your central theme and you want to stay on theme, you want to avoid too much repetition. And one way I might think about this is through using different types of examples. So I think I mentioned the example of someone who's a swimmer and is talking about swimming. We want that student to also talk about different types of extracurricular activities, maybe a class they took. You wouldn't want your whole essay to only reference one thing that you did. So trying to avoid too much repetition in one area of your life. Use active voice. I love a tool. I love the Grammarly tool, which can be really helpful. Reading out loud is another way to help identify more active versus passive voice. Asking a friend to read your essay. But you want to write kind of clear, easy to understand sentences in a confident and kind of passionate tone. draft and redraft. Even at the brainstorm stage, you may try out different ways to tell your story. I've worked with students who will write one essay and then we're like, not sure if this is quite working, and maybe start in a different iteration, kind of play with a different topic and see what sticks. So don't be afraid to do multiple drafts, and just make sure to give yourself time to go through that process of drafting and editing.
Awesome. Do you have anything
And
to
then
add?
we can,
Oh, do you have
oh
anything
no,
to
go
add to
ahead.
this, Marina?
Maybe just around the idea of avoiding repetition, and Brittney mentioned like, okay, an example from swimming and then an example from something else. That's like the really cool thing about identifying those themes, is that you can find kind of the same values or the same ideas and principles in a swimming example as you can in, something exciting that you did in science, or a family situation or something like that. And that's what's really going to show like your self-awareness that you can find across different areas, things that tell a consistent story about you.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing that I would add, one thing that I've learned from the admissions counselors through doing these webinars is that your personal statement or any kind of written essay that you want to write should show your resume. So, like, I've heard a lot of admissions counselors say that some students just reiterate their resumes, or you're tempted to kind of reiterate what's on your resume and these are like my academic achievements, and showing that in your personal statement will go a lot longer, or will take you further rather. All right, so we are going to move on to the next one, Brittney.
Sure, yeah. So we've already talked, I mentioned earlier, about talking to close family and friends. They are your allies and resources. And so brainstorming aloud, I know I'm someone who really enjoys brainstorming with other people, and that kind of helps me get into the writing mode. So try to seek insights from friends, family, from your teachers, advisors. That can be a really great way to identify topics and get more perspective. Read other personal statements. There's a lot of personal statements on the internet. There are books out there, and you'll start to become a good judge of what you find compelling and what you think maybe you don't find as interesting, or you feel like was confusing. And so kind of like become a good avid reader of personal statements. That can also give you some guidance of what you think works well. And as you read personal statements, take note of what worked for you in that essay or what didn't. And then always write from an authentic place and tell your story. Don't try to tell the story that you think admissions committee wants to hear. Tell the story that is true for you. I think these days, especially, schools really want to know who you are, what makes you you, and what makes you different. And that is what they are looking for. So there is no one right answer, no one essay that will get you accepted to any school. The best essays are ones that are personal, they're compelling, they can be emotional, they can make you laugh, they can make you, feel something and feel a connection to that person. And that goes back to that idea of rooting for you, and, wanting to have an admissions committee that says like, oh man, we really want to meet this person. We want this person at our school, because they feel that connection.
Awesome. And Marina, do you have any final thoughts on this slide?
There were two things. One, I really loved, Brittney, your point about as you're reading personal statement samples, to write down what worked for you. I think that's such a great idea, because it can be tempting to try to just like replicate something without really knowing what it is that you're trying to achieve. And I think writing down what is it that you liked about it can help you recreate it, but in your own way. And the other thing that I just want to highlight is talking to close friends and family is super great for coming up with a good idea and making sure that it's coming across clearly. If that doesn't feel comfortable, like, don't just keep it to yourself. Do find somebody else that you feel comfortable talking to about it. Schools often have resources. Talk to a stranger, like find a buddy in another class, someone that maybe, you're not as self-conscious with. I just really encourage that. I recently read the book Smart Brevity, and one thing that really resonated with me in that book was this idea that when you have something in your head, like an idea in your head, and then you start trying to get it out on paper, you can kind of muddy things up if you're just on your own, like with a computer. But if you try to explain your idea to someone else, you're going to get to the point much more quickly. And so just like I said, outlining is maybe not the funnest process for everyone, but is really important and helps you save time and be more efficient and effective. I think talking to someone about what you think you want to write about can be another really big time saver, because it's just going to help you articulate the point before you start trying to get it down on paper.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So that concludes the presentation. We're going to move on to our Q&A section. So I'm going to give you guys a second to pop your questions into the Q&A box. And while we wait for that, I would like to ask our panelists, do you guys have any pieces of advice, any stories to tell, success stories, maybe things to avoid even pertaining to writing your personal statement? Whoever wants to take the floor first, go ahead.
I can give a couple of thoughts that come to mind. One would be, I think it's kind of a pitfall, but also maybe an opportunity to flip it around. I think that some of the most effective personal statements that I've read transcend the student. And by that, I mean, they are talking about what they're interested in and what they care about in the light of like how it impacts their community or how it impacts their country, the world. They're excited about a change that they want to see. And that's kind of what's driving their interest. I do see some personal statements where people are really focused on their own achievements, like, oh, I want to become a lawyer, or I want to be a doctor, and that's so exciting. And those are wonderful aspirations. But I think it can be really meaningful to talk about helping people, to talk about what change you want to see in the world, to talk about the issues you care about and why. So really being able to connect to your why and like what it is that drives what it is you're interested in. And I know this can be really hard at first, especially if that's not something you're used to thinking about. But I think a pitfall can be making your personal statement so much about you that you miss the opportunity to kind of connect with a school, with a university, with a community. And then the other tip I have would be, don't make it an academic paper. Don't make it too technical. Sometimes I've had students who want to like cite authors or talk about really specific facts about the thing that they're interested in. And you can do that if it's translatable. There's a way to do it effectively, but you want to make sure that you're making your writing accessible to someone who knows nothing about the thing that you're really passionate about. So assume no knowledge of any kind of area of interest that you have. Assume that someone is just an educated and interested person, but maybe doesn't have all of the same background that you do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Marina, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think one thing that I encourage students to do is to be vulnerable in their essays. I think it's okay to come away writing your essay feeling like, oh, I feel kind of like a little embarrassed, or maybe a little bit like I had never shared that before, or to really have like some strong emotions about what they've shared. I think it's a good signal that you've like done some self-reflection. I mean, if it's like super embarrassing, like use a filter and figure that out. But it should be deeper than surface level. So definitely spend some time thinking about, like Brittney said, the whys. Ask yourself that question, like, why do I want to be a lawyer? And then ask yourself again, okay, why do I want to, if you wanted to be a lawyer so that you can be like a public defender, ask yourself again, okay, why do I want to be a public defender? And then just keep going and do kind of this set of 5 whys to really get at the underlying values that you have. And then the other thing that I would say that maybe is tempting right now is like ChatGPT. Don't let ChatGPT write your essay. It will be obvious. I don't know what ChatGPT will look like, a few months from now. Things are going very quickly, and I'm sure there will be a lot of people that are tempted to do that. But just remember that these admissions counselors have read essays for years and years, and they're going to be able to identify something that is not written by, a student. So.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think they're coming up with like a ChatGPT kind of, I know, a thing that can tell whether or not it's been written by a bot. But thank you guys so much for that. So we're gonna move on to our questions. So we have a question here. The student asks, in your essays, can you place more emphasis on personal life experiences that make you seem more down to earth and human? I haven't won any large awards or championships, so I feel that seeming more human and big-hearted is my only option.
Take a stab at this. And then, yeah, would love to hear other thoughts. I think I would encourage you to take a moment to like really pat yourself on the back. And you don't have to have won a large award or a championship to have accomplished something really cool. And your essay also doesn't have to be about accomplishments. But I think it can be kind of overwhelming. You see like all these people that are, number one in this or number one in that, or have achieved, something that feels very out of reach for you. Try not to play like the comparison game and really think about what makes you unique and what you've done that has made you feel special, or what you've done that has made you proud, or maybe what you've done that felt like a failure, but that you learned from. So yeah, I guess I would just stay away from like this kind of thinking of like, maybe I haven't done what others have, and find what really is your, accomplishment.
And do you have anything to add to that, Brittney?
Yeah, I think Marina captured it well. And I would say I wouldn't frame it as two options, that either you won big awards or, it's about being human or big-hearted. Regardless, you want to kind of make a human connection and a personal connection, but I would think about what are some of the qualities that make you who you are. Are you someone who's really creative, really introspective? Are you someone who's a connector of people and who's very gregarious and who likes to make other people feel valued? Are you someone who likes to find answers to questions and you love to research? What are the things that make you you, and how have your experiences connected to those qualities? That might be a good way to start. So if you think of yourself as someone who's very big-hearted, like that perked my attention, and I would want to ask you, what does that mean to you? And what are some times when you felt you've been able to be big-hearted and be compassionate? And why is compassion important to you? And how do you want to, use your compassion to further interests that you have? How will that kind of help you in your academic career and in your life more broadly? So definitely don't count yourself out. Don't compare yourself to others. Know that you are unique and special and fantastic exactly as you are, and figure out how to tell that story in a way that others can relate to.
That was amazing advice and beautifully said, you both. All right, so thank you so much. And we are going to move on to our next question. Are there any topics that students should avoid writing about in your personal statement?
I can start with this one. So the first way I'd answer this question is, I actually don't think there's any topics that you shouldn't write about if you can write about them well. And so I think certain topics you might think to avoid, things that are overly political, something like a controversial topic, something that maybe is a hot button topic within the United States or wherever you're living. And I think I would say if you choose a topic like that, you want to be thoughtful in how you write about it. There's nothing wrong with having a point of view and having an opinion, and you're not going to be accepted or rejected from any school or university because you have a kind of well-researched and well thought out opinion, even if it's one that the admissions committee might disagree with. But I think you want to be thoughtful and you want to be able to talk about that if it's something you're passionate about. Maybe it's something that you have had extracurricular or volunteer experiences in. Don't pick something that's, maybe hard to talk about if you don't have a personal connection to it just for the sake of it. And then I would also say maybe on the flip side to this question is you might think, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk about my identity or my religion or, my sexual orientation or something that's very personal. But I would say if that is something that's important to who you are and you want to share it, I think schools are happy to read about it. And so don't feel like you have to shy away from that if that's something that's really core to who you are and something you want the admissions committee to know about you because it shaped your experiences.
Thank you. And Marina, do you have anything to add to this?
No, honestly, I think that is it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's see what our next question is. All right. So what are some common issues that you guys have seen in personal statements you've reviewed? Some just general things that students sometimes overlook that make a huge impact on how their statement is read and received by the admissions committee.
I know Brittney has some really great examples, so I'll share a couple and let you chime in. But and actually, Bianca, you sort of alluded to this, like one common mistake at the beginning when you're kind of doing your initial drafts is like just listing out your resume and kind of taking that approach of this championship and that award. This should not be just your resume with a few filler words in it. It should really be like an analysis of what is important and what values you're trying to show. So I would say that. And I think the other one that really stands out to me is like telling and not showing, which is sort of similar, like telling people what you did, but not getting them to like emotionally connect with you, not sharing any detail. And sometimes, and I think another thing that we'll often see is instead of kind of capturing that moment, like Brittney suggested with the swimmer, right? Like put the reader in the water or get them really in that situation with you so that they can imagine it for themselves maybe and feel that empathy and that connection. Sometimes it's just kind of telling like, I was at a swim meet and like XYZ happened. Really want to try to do something that's more engaging.
Yeah. Brittney, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. I would add, I think it really hits on the theme of this webinar, which is writing without a plan. It can actually be really obvious to the reader if you kind of did a brain dump and just a stream of consciousness writing and then made that your essay. Certainly there's room for just taking time to do a brain dump, to do stream of conscious writing. If that's a helpful way to brainstorm for you, absolutely. But don't go into writing your essay without a plan, without some structure, because what ends up happening is you'll start to meander or you'll put too many things into your essay or too many topics. So I would say that's one of them. Another really obvious and simple one is just make sure that your essay is grammatically correct, that there's no major errors, that you're addressing the correct school. You'd be surprised this happens like often enough that students will reuse essays for different schools that they haven't really personalized, and they'll swap the names or they'll forget to swap the names. So I would say also just don't rush the process. It can be really clear if you wrote your essay the night before it was due. So give yourself time so you're not in that position.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And also on that note, as admissions counselors, I'm sure you guys have worked with a lot of students. What are some common pitfalls that you guys see as students are writing their personal statements, kind of speed bumps in the process, if I may?
I think it is common to kind of feel like you don't have something to write about, or something meaningful. So just kind of making those assumptions without really evaluating your experience and kind of not giving yourself enough credit. I think that can be one thing. Another thing we've sort of talked about is trying to be too academic or too formal or trying to sound really smart. You don't have to use the super fancy words that no one knows to sound smart. You got to make your point to sound smart. So yeah, don't use language that isn't you. We definitely see a lot of that happening as well.
And Brittney, do you have anything to add?
I think those cover all the ones that come to mind for me. Yeah, I
Awesome.
think that covers a lot of it.
All right. So I'm going to ask one last question for you guys, and that's going to be, personally, what do you guys think makes a strong personal statement? And whoever wants to start can take the floor.
I'm happy to start. I would say a strong personal statement is personal to the person who wrote it. It couldn't be written by anybody else. It's very clear that this is a personal story. It's authentic. In the same vein, it is something that is kind of touches the reader. And there are lots of ways to do this, whether it's making it funny, whether it's making it sentimental, whether it's kind of showing off different ways that you communicate. And I think it's clear and written in kind of plain language. So we talked about not trying to, it's kind of might seem counterintuitive because you probably spend time studying SAT and ACT vocabulary, but you actually don't need to shove all of that into your personal statement. You want to write your essay in a way that, like I use the example, like a sixth grader could read it and understand it. So make it really clear and easy to read and make it memorable. Make it, make sure you're using examples, that kind of descriptive language. So kind of the putting the person in the water, putting the reader in the water metaphor we've been talking about, something that the reader will walk away and remember. I can think about an essay I had read when I was a senior in college, or sorry, in high school, that talked about someone's creativity, and they basically shared stories of how they used to build forts under their kitchen table, and it like took them to imaginative worlds, and they related this trait that this person had as a very small child to how they now are kind of a creative, imaginative person as a high schooler, and that how they want to take that forward in their college degree. And I can still remember it now, many, many years later. And so those are the kinds of essays that you want to write, something that is memorable, personal, and authentic.
And Marina, so I'm actually going to weave in another question into this because someone had just popped in and asked if you can also add and share an example of a great personal statement that you guys have written, which Brittney had done. Thank you. Yeah. Marina, take the floor.
Well, I think to the question around what makes a strong personal statement, I think the only thing I'd add is that it has a so what, like there is a point to it. And I have read it and now I can say, oh, that's the person who is something, right? That's the person who is like your, for example, that's that really creative fort builder. Something that can kind of be like your little identity for the context of these discussions. I think that can be really helpful. Just making sure that it's really clear what you're trying to communicate and that you've done it successfully. And in terms of a great example, let me think on that for a minute. And I will be right back to you.
I'm gonna take, oh, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
go for it, go for it.
I remember reading an essay about siblings. So I think this is actually in the book in a book called like the College Essay Guy, maybe. So you may have come across it. But it really stood out to me, and I think it's because I have two young kids, and so I kind of maybe envisioned this like situation. And it was a little the hook was very crazy. It was like something along the lines of like, I shot my brother. And I was like, so, but then it goes through and turns this like very shocking thing into like a real point, and kind of turns the story around into how he has become like his brother's defender and like biggest fan. And don't worry, he didn't really to his brother in the way that it makes you think of that time. But I think what really stood out to me about that one was the hook was very powerful, but then the way that it was carried throughout was really beautifully written. And at the end, like when you went back to the beginning and thought about how they started it and how they ended it, it almost kind of gave you goosebumps. So that sense of like feeling and connecting and understanding the person a little bit.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. That concludes our webinar for this evening. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Marina and Brittney, for being here and sharing your knowledge and insight. If you guys have any more personal questions regarding your college application or need some assistance and guidance with your personal statements, please feel free to send us an email or book a free consultation with us. We are always here to help you guys out. Yeah, and that's us for now. Thank you so much and have a great night, and we'll see you at the next one. Bye.